The days spent with her father on the farm were precious to Tu Tien. Every morning they brewed tea together, sitting under the bougainvillea trellis, chatting about everyday life, before heading to the garden to work. A simple yet warm life made Tu Tien feel as if she had finally been compensated for the years she lacked the warmth of family. One late afternoon, as the golden sunset bathed the farm in its glow, Tu Tien sat with her father on the porch. She suddenly turned to him, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. "Dad, how is Mom doing back home? Is she still well?" Her question made him pause. He gazed into the distance, his eyes filled with emotions he couldn't quite express. After a moment of silence, he softly replied, "Your mother, she's still well. But ever since you went missing, she hasn't been the same." Tu Tien listened intently, her heart tightening. Her father continued, his voice choked with emotion. "The day you disappeared at the market, your mother didn't eat or sleep for days. Every time she missed you, she would hold on to the clothes you used to wear and cry. She lost interest in everything. Her eyes were always red, and everything she looked at seemed distant and unreal." He lowered his head, his voice trembling. "I know I was wrong. I promised to take care of you. But I lost you. I always thought that if I could find you, maybe your mother would forgive me." Hearing these words, Tu Tien's tears welled up and streamed down her cheeks. She couldn't imagine the immense pain her mother had endured all those years. She tightly grasped her father's hand, her voice shaking. "Dad, I don't blame you. I know it wasn't your fault. But Mom has suffered too much. I want to go back and see her to tell her that I'm okay, so she doesn't have to be sad anymore." Her father looked at her, his eyes filled with unshed tears. "Do you really want to go back home? I don't know how your mother will react. She's been waiting for so many years. Sometimes I fear she won't even dare to believe it's real." Tu Tien nodded, her gaze firm. "I want to see Mom. I want to hug her and tell her how much I love her, Dad. Let's go home together, okay?" In the days that followed, Tu Tien kept asking her father about their hometown and about the memories of her childhood. Though her recollections of her mother had faded over the years, every story her father told brought back the image of a gentle, loving mother who cherished her child above all else. Her father recounted the nights her mother stayed up late, sewing her a new dress, and the days she stood under the scorching sun at the market just to save enough money to buy her a book. So loved those memories only deepened Tu Tien's longing to return to once again feel her mother's love. One evening, as father and daughter sat beside the flickering oil lamp, her father looked at her for a long moment before saying, "If you truly want to go back, I will take you. Your mother has waited for this day for many years. This is also something I need to do to make up for her pain." Tu Tien smiled, her eyes glistening with happiness. She gently held her father's hand, her voice soft yet filled with determination. "Dad, I believe everything will be okay. Our family will be reunited again." Just like before, her father nodded, his heart overflowing with emotions. After so many years apart, the long-awaited reunion was finally near. This journey was not just a return to their hometown, but a return to the love and warmth of the family they had once lost at night. The moon cast a gentle glow over the farm, and the soft breeze swayed the leaves. Jack drove to Tien's farm, bringing along a large bag full of fresh fruit and a bottle of wine. Stepping out of the car, his eyes sparkled with joy as he called out from the gate, Uncle Tien, I'm here. Tu Tien's father stepped out of the house, holding a flashlight in his hand, his face lighting up with a warm smile. Jack, is that you bringing gifts again? You don't need to bring anything when you visit. Jack scratched his head sheepishly and grinned. Well, it's just a small gesture. Every time I come I eat a lot. So I'd feel bad if I didn't bring anything. Jack and Tu Tien's father sat on the porch, surrounded by a cozy atmosphere. A pot of hot tea sat before them, its delicate aroma filling the air. Jack slid a cup toward him and joked, "Uncle, have some tea." Talking without a cup of tea just doesn't feel right. The old man nodded, lifting the cup to take a sip. His eyes filled with affection as he looked at Jack. "So what do you want to ask me about today? Or are you going to ask about Teo's childhood again?" Jack laughed heartily and nodded. "That's right. I want to hear more childhood stories about Teo, so I have more material to tease her later." The old man chuckled, his eyes gleaming as he recalled the past. She was a mischievous one, but very lovable. There was this one time when her mother made her a new dress. She was so excited, running around everywhere, and ended up tearing it on the very first day. No one had the heart to scold her. We just saw her silly grin and couldn't stay mad. Jack laughed, picturing little Tutty, and with bright, lively eyes he spoke with warmth in his voice. "I can imagine how adorable she must have been. But I also know she's been through a lot of hardships. And that just makes me want to cherish her even more." Tu Tien's father nodded gently, setting his cup down before asking, "And what about you? How's your work going?" "You must be quite busy," Jack replied honestly. "Yes. I've been quite busy, but I always try to make time to visit to TM. No matter how demanding work gets, family will always be my top priority." The old man smiled approvingly and patted Jack on the shoulder. "Tu Tien is lucky to have someone like you. It puts my mind at ease, knowing that you truly care for her." Jack bowed his head slightly in gratitude. "I will never let Tu Tien suffer or feel neglected. I promise to always take care of her and protect her." Tu Tien emerged from the kitchen, carrying a plate of freshly stir-fried vegetables, her face glowing with happiness. "What are you two talking about? That's making you laugh so much. It's time to eat." Jack quickly stood up to help her set the table. A simple yet comforting meal was laid out. Sour fish soup, stir-fried vegetables with garlic, and a fragrant dish of braised pork with eggs. The three of them gathered around the table, their laughter filling the air. Jack picked up a piece of fish and placed it into Tu Tien's father's bowl, jokingly saying, "Eat up, uncle. You'll need the energy to tell me more stories about Tu Tien's childhood." The old man chuckled, glancing between Jack and Tu Tien with joy in his eyes. "This boy sure knows how to flatter, doesn't he, Tu Tien?" Tu Tien smiled and looked at Jack lovingly. "I think Jack only knows how to flatter you, Uncle." Jack pretended to pout. "So I don't score any points with you at all. And here I was about to give you more braised pork." The three of them burst into laughter, their meal unfolding in an atmosphere of love and warmth. After dinner, Jack and Tu Tien's father continued chatting on the porch, while Tu Tien cleaned up inside. The moon had risen high, casting a gentle glow over the courtyard. Jack thought to himself how precious this moment was. He could feel his bond with Tu Tien's family growing stronger, something he had always longed for. A deep sense of happiness and determination filled his heart. The determination to protect and build a happy home. That night, as Jack sat quietly in the small room, Tu Tien walked in with a gentle smile. She placed 2 cups of tea on the table, before sitting down beside him. Her eyes sparkled under the warm glow of the oil lamp, as if lost in deep thought. Jack, Tu Tien called softly, her voice warm but tinged with hesitation. I want to tell you something. Jack set his cup down, his gaze filled with concern. What is it, Tien? Go ahead, I'm listening. Tu Tien clasped her hands together, as if gathering her courage. My father told me about my mother. She is still living in our hometown, but she doesn't know whether I'm alive or not. When I went missing, she was devastated. So much that she nearly lost her spirit. I never imagined it would be so painful. Jack nodded, his eyes thoughtful. He understood that these words were not easy for Tu Tien to say gently. He placed his hand over hers, offering silent support. I want to go back to see my mother, Jack. But I'm also afraid I don't know if she will accept me. Her voice grew quieter, sinking into her worries. Jack smiled reassuringly, his eyes filled with certainty. Why wouldn't she accept you? You are her daughter, I believe. She will be overjoyed to know you're alive and well. Besides, I'll go with you. Tu Tien looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. You want to go with me, of course. Jack affirmed, you are the most important person to me. If something matters to you, then it matters to me too. Besides, I want to meet your mother. If she allows it, I'd like to go with both of you. At that moment, Tu Tien's father stepped in from the garden. Hearing their conversation, he cleared his throat lightly and looked at Jack with a contemplative, yet appreciative gaze. Jack, do you really want to go back to the countryside with us? He asked, his deep voice carrying genuine concern. Yes, Uncle, Jack replied sincerely. I want to come along to support you and Tu Tien. I also truly want to meet her mother. Tu Tien's father was silent for a moment, his eyes shifting from Jack to his daughter. Then he stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Jack's shoulder. Unexpectedly, he took both Jack and Tu Tien's hands in his own, as if binding them together. I truly thank you, Jack, he said, his voice slightly trembling. If it weren't for you, I don't know how my daughter would have gotten through these past days. She has endured so much. You have given her peace, a shoulder to lean on. Without you, I can't bear to think how she would have survived it. Their heartfelt words left both Jack and Tu Tien deeply moved. Tu Tien looked at her father, her eyes brimming with tears. She gripped his hand tightly, as if to convey all her gratitude and love. Father, thank you, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. If you hadn't found me, I wouldn't have the life I have today. And Jack, thank you for always being by my side. Jack looked at the two people in front of him, a wave of indescribable emotion washing over him. He held Tu Tien's hand firmly and turned to her father, his eyes filled with determination. Uncle, don't worry. I will always be by Tu Tien's side. I promise to protect and cherish her for the rest of my life. Tu Tien's father smiled and patted Jack's shoulder, gently, as if affirming his trust in those words. Hearing that puts my heart at ease. Let's bring my daughter home so our family can finally reunite after all these years. The small house was filled with warmth and deep emotion. Love, understanding, and hope intertwined, creating a moment that all three of them would forever hold in their hearts. That morning, the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden hue over the small road in front of the farm. Jack carefully checked the vehicle, ensuring everything was in order before they set off. Tu Tien's father had given clear directions. A long and challenging journey lay ahead. But for Jack and Tu Tien, it was the road leading to reunion. A dream that had been waiting for far too long. Tu Tien sat in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where endless rice fields stretched before her. Her face held a mix of excitement and anxiety. In the back seat, her father remained silent, his aged eyes weighed down by memories and anticipation. "Is the village still far?" Uncle Jack asked, glancing back with concern. Tu Tien's father replied in a low, somber voice, "Not much farther once we leave this main road and turn onto the dirt path. We'll be there, but the road, it's difficult to travel. I just worry." "Don't worry, Uncle. I'll drive carefully. As long as I can bring Tu Tien back to see her mother. No matter how tough the road is, I'm willing to go through it." Jack smiled, his eyes filled with determination. The car left the smooth asphalt behind and entered a bumpy dirt road. On either side, lush green cornfields stretched alongside scattered humble houses. The path grew narrower, and the tires sank into the soft mud left by the previous night's rain. The jolts and bumps made Tu Tien instinctively grip Jack's hand for balance. As they navigated through the winding roads, the village gradually appeared in sight. Small, simple houses with thatched roofs stood scattered, their walls made of woven bamboo worn by time. The dirt path leading into the village was narrow, lined with swaying bamboo groves. Children in old faded clothes played by the pond, their curious eyes following the unfamiliar car as it approached. "Is this where my mother lives?" Tu Tien asked in a trembling voice, her throat tight with emotion, as she took in the poverty around her. Her father's eyes turned red as he nodded. "Yes, my child. This is where your mother and I lived together before our family was separated. She never left this place, always waiting for the day she could reunite with you." The village was quiet, with only a few elderly people sitting on their porches, watching the car with cautious curiosity. As Jack brought the vehicle to a stop at a small incline, he stepped out first and helped Tu Tien's father down. "Let me help you," Uncle Jack said, gently supporting the older man as he climbed out. The ground was soft beneath their feet, and in the distance a small, thatched house stood, surrounded by a simple bamboo fence. "That's your mother's house," Tu Tien's father said, his voice breaking with emotion. Tu Tien followed his gaze, and her vision blurred with tears. She could hardly believe that in just a few more steps, she would finally meet the mother she had longed for all these years. Jack held her hand firmly, offering silent strength. "Let's go, Tien. Your mother is waiting," he said, his voice warm and encouraging. They walked slowly along the dirt path, passing scattered vegetable patches. The distant crowing of roosters mixed with the gentle hum of insects in the midday air. As they neared the house, the wooden door creaked open, and an elderly woman stood there, her tear-filled eyes locked onto the three figures approaching. "Mother," Tu Tien gasped, her voice breaking. She let go of Jack's hand and ran toward the woman. The old woman stretched out her arms, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Tu Tien, is it really you?" Her voice trembled as her frail hands gripped her daughter's shoulders, as if afraid this was only a dream. "It's me, Mother. I've come home," Tu Tien sobbed, clinging tightly to her mother. Behind them, Jack and Tu Tien's father stood silently, witnessing the deeply emotional reunion. Jack bowed his head respectfully. His voice was gentle, sincere. I'm Jack, mother. I came with Uncle and Tu Tien to bring her home to you. The old woman looked at Jack, nodding as fresh tears fell. Thank you. Thank you for bringing my child back to me. In that moment, the entire village seemed to hold its breath. Only the soft whisper of the wind through the bamboo trees remained. This was the reunion Tu Tien had dreamed of. The dream of a family once torn apart. Held in her mother's embrace, she felt the warmth she had yearned for all these years. And Jack knew he had fulfilled his promise to bring happiness to the woman he loved. In the humble thatched house, the faint scent of wood smoke and the gentle aroma of herbal water filled the air. Tu Tien sat beside her mother on an old woven mat, her small hands resting in her mother's frail, bony ones. The older woman's eyes never left Tu Tien's face, as if trying to memorize every feature, making sure that the daughter she had longed for all these years was truly sitting beside her. I still can't believe it. My little girl has finally come home, Tu Tien's mother whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, her gaze overflowing with love. She reached out, gently stroking her daughter's hair, every touch filled with tenderness. All these years I've prayed to heaven and Buddha, just hoping for the day I could see you again. Do you know how much I've missed you? Tears streamed down Tu Tien's face as she clutched her mother's hands tightly. Mother, I'm so sorry for making you suffer all this time. She choked out. I've dreamed of this day too. The day I could finally see you again. Jack stood silently by the doorway, his expression soft yet unable to hide his emotions. Behind him, Tu Tien's father placed a firm hand on Jack's shoulder, nodding slightly as if to express his gratitude. Jack responded with a small smile before stepping closer. But he remained quiet, letting mother and daughter cherish their reunion. After a moment, Tu Tien's mother turned to look at Jack, her eyes filled with both curiosity and warmth. And you are? Jack bowed respectfully, his voice steady and sincere. I'm Jack, I'm Tu Tien's fiancé. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise. She glanced at her daughter, then back at Jack as if seeking confirmation. Fiancé? Is that true, Tian too? Tian nodded shyly, a rosy blush tinting her cheeks, but her eyes sparkled with happiness. Yes, mother. Jack has always been by my side, taking care of me and protecting me. For a moment, Tu Tien's mother was silent. Then her eyes softened even more as she reached for Jack's hands. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for loving and taking care of my daughter. If it weren't for you, I don't know how she would have survived all these years. Jack quickly shook his head, his voice filled with sincerity. Please don't say that, ma'am. Tu Tien is the most wonderful woman I've ever met. Being with her is the greatest blessing of my life. I promise to do everything I can to make her happy. His words filled the room with warmth. Tu Tien's mother wiped away her tears and looked at her daughter once more. You've suffered so much, my child. I know that, but now I can finally be at peace. You have someone who loves and protects you. That's all a mother could ever wish for. Mama, Tu Tien whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She leaned into her mother's shoulder, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of her mother's breath, a warmth she had long yearned for. I promise I'll never leave you again. Our family will be together and happy just like before. Her mother nodded, a smile forming through her tears. That's all I ever wanted. We may be poor, but as long as we have each other, it's enough." Standing up, she walked over to an old wooden cabinet. After rummaging for a moment, she pulled out a white wool scarf, now yellowed with time. "Tien, this is the scarf I knitted for you when you were a child. I've kept it all these years, hoping one day I could give it back to you too." Tien took the scarf in her hands, feeling its soft time-worn fabric. A deep warmth spread through her heart. "Thank you, Mother. I've missed you so much." Watching the scene, Jack clenched his hands slightly, trying to contain the emotions welling up inside him. He could feel the boundless love Tien's mother had for her, and it only strengthened his resolve to protect and cherish the woman he loved. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Though the meal was simple, a plate of boiled vegetables, a pot of braised fish, and a small bowl of rice, the warmth and love filling the air made it feel like a feast. Laughter echoed through the house, washing away years of sorrow and separation. Later that night, as they prepared to rest, Tu Tien's mother gently spoke to Jack. "Jack, I don't know how else to express my gratitude. My daughter has endured so much pain, but knowing she has you by her side, I can finally be at ease." Jack met her gaze, his voice firm with conviction. "Please rest assured, ma'am. I will do everything in my power to bring happiness to Tu Tien. This I promise you." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but this time they were tears of relief.